Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Beis, Daf 12, Masechta Rosh Hashanah. Moving on in our Mishnah, we then move on to Yerakis. Right? The Mishnah says that the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for Yerakis, for vegetables. We're going to understand what the nafkamin is over there. We're going to talk about really more mayser ani, mayser sheni. Very interesting sort of sources over there. Shtickle Nidarim there at the end, but nothing too crazy. Friends, let's jump in. We're already Lemaisa halfway through Yud Beis Amud Aleph, so let's begin there. Mamish, like halfway in the middle, there's a two dots that says V'li Yerakis. That the Mishnah says that the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for vegetables. Tana, Li Yerakis, Ulemaisa Nidarim. Interesting. So, we have a brisa that says that the first day of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for vegetables and for mayser and for nidarim. So what about, right, li'irakas my ninu? What about vegetables? Why do vegetables get their own Rosh Hashanah? What do they need a Rosh Hashanah for? Mayser yerek. So the Gemara says for mayser of vegetables. When you separate mayser from vegetables, so Rosh Hashanah is the first of Tishrei. What does that mean? It means, as we're going to see at the bottom of the Amud, that if you harvest vegetables before the first of Tishrei, and you harvest more vegetables after the first of Tishrei, so Tishrei is that cutoff, and we're going to see that you don't separate trumas and maisers from one year to the next, right? So whatever is picked before, is harvested before the first of Tishrei, so you separate maisers from that. Whatever is harvested after Tishrei, the first of Tishrei, you separate mayser from that. You don't separate, don't mix and match maisers, right? If you have 100 cucumbers from before Tishrei, you take 10 cucumbers from them. Don't take 10 cucumbers from that after the first of Tishrei stuff for that. No. Keep them separate. You separate your mayser from what, before the first of Tishrei, you separate from that. From after Tishrei, you separate from that. Don't mix them up. Weiter in Shas. So, Hainu Maisus. But the Gemara says, wait. But the Brisa said, right, the Yerakis Ula Maisers. If we say that Yerakis is Mayser Yerakis, well, then what is Maisers? So, Tana de Rabbanan v'Katani de Oraisa. Well, vegetables, Mayser of vegetables is Mider Rabbanan, friends. Right? What does the Pasuk say? It says, Mayser de Goncha Tiroshcha Vitzarecha. The Pasuk only points out mayser of dagon, of grain, tirosh, of grapes, and yitzer, which is olives. So midoraisa, you only separate mayser from grain, grapes, and olives. Vegetables, midoraisa, you don't separate mayser from. So it's saying that, but midorabanan you do. So it's saying that the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for vegetables, for mayser of vegetables, and also it's the Rosh Hashanah for mayser of dagon, which is midoraisa. So we have midirabanan and doraisa. Less midoraisa bereisha. Why doesn't the brisa first mention the mayser of dagon, which is midoraisa? Mention that first. Why are we first mentioning the vegetables, which are dirabanan? So the Gemara gives an interesting answer. I did the chaviva le'akdama. Well, after all, the teacher of the brises was he's one of the people making the rules, right? He's one of the rabbanim, so he's more excited to teach about the rabbinic things because it's more closer to his heart. So he first taught; it was more beloved to him. So he taught the mayser yerek first because it's a derabbanan enactment, as opposed to the mayser dagon, which is midaraisa. Mitana didan, the Tana in our Mishnah, which only mentioned Yerakis, it didn't mention Mayser, so it only mentioned the Derabanan, it didn't mention anything about the Deraisis. Tana Derabanan v'kol shekin Deraisa. Well, it mentioned Derabanan, it mentioned the Yerakis, Mayser of Yerakis, which is Derabanan, and Memele, if there's a cutoff for Mayser of vegetables, which are Derabanan, so there's also going to be a cutoff for Mayser of Dagon, which is Deraisa. Vilesni Mayser. Now the Gemara is kind of nitpicking a little bit. It says in the Brisa, maisris, which is plural. So why say maisris? Why not maiser, singular? After all, it doesn't include mayser yerek. So echad maiser behem echad maiser dagon. Well, it's saying that the cutoff of the first of Tishrei is not just mayser dagon, but also mayser behema. V'lesne yerek. Okay, now why say yerakis plural? Why not just say yerek, singular? Trei gavne yerek. Well, there's two types of vegetables. The Tananis, we learn in the Mishnah, yerek negad, that if you have vegetables that you bundle together, misha ye'agid, they're chayiv in maisris, trumas and maisris, once you bundle them together. V'sheino negad, vegetables that you don't normally bundle together, misha yemale sakli. Well, if you don't bundle them together, so at what point are they considered? You have to separate trumas and maisris from them once you put them together and put them in whatever vessel you're going to be putting them in. All right, so both bundled and non-bundled vegetables. The cutoff for mayser is the 1st of Tishrei. Okay, that sounds like fun. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, liket yerek erev Rosh Hashanah. If a fellow he harvested vegetables on erev Rosh Hashanah, ad shelo tavu hashemesh, before Shkia. So it's mamash erev Rosh Hashanah, he's out picking vegetables. V'chazav liket mishutavu hashemesh. So he went out and picked vegetables before the sun set, and then he went and picked vegetables after the sun set. Okay, I wonder, isn't that already Rosh Hashanah? I don't know, I'm not getting into that. But anyways, the point is that he picked some vegetables right before, at the last moments of the year, and he picked other vegetables in the first moments of the new year. Ein tormin umaysun mizeh alzeh. Well, you basically pick two sets of vegetables in two separate years, right? It's like, people make the joke on Erev Rosh Hashanah, hey, I'll see you next year. It's funny because, it sounds like it's so long away, but the truth is it's really just a few hours away. So it's like a similar joke over here, that they're picking vegetables right before the year ends, and they're picking vegetables right as the new year begins. And they're two separate years. And therefore, you have to separate mayser from each batch separately. Because we don't separate trumas and maisers lo min hachodesh ala yoshan, you don't separate from the new year for the old year. V'lo min hayoshan ala chodesh, you don't separate from the old crop for the new crop. Rather, you keep them separate, and you separate and you separate trumas and maisers from last year's, from this year's. Now, if we're talking about the year that's ending being the second year of the Shemitah cycle, and the year that's entering being the third year of the Shemitah cycle, now of course, friends, we already know from the Brachas days, that the Shemitah cycle is of course 7 years. Years 1 and 2 and years 4 and 5, in addition to mayser rishon, you separate mayser sheni. Years 3 and 6, you separate, in addition to mayser rishon, mayser ani, that you give the mayser to poor people. And then, of course, on the Shemitah year, you don't separate trumas and maisers. So now, in mayser shnia nichneses l'shlisha. So if the year ending was the second year, so the first round that you picked, the first batch that you picked was in year 2, and the second batch that you picked was now in year 3. So shnia mayser rishon and mayser sheni. So what you picked in the second year, you're going to be separating mayser rishon and mayser sheni. Shlish is mayser rishon and mayser ani. And what you picked in now the third year, so you're going to be separating mayser rishon and mayser ani, not mayser sheni. How do we know this? Amr Rabbi Shimon Levi says, Rabbi Shimon Levi ki sechala leiser es kol mayser tuascha b'shana ashlishes shnasa mayser. So when you finish separating mayser from your grain on the third year of the Shemitah cycle, shnas mayser, the year of mayser individual, singular, shana she'ein ba ela mayser echad, a year in which there is only one of the regular maysers. Haketzad, how is this? Do we say mayser rishon umayser ani, that on the third year you separate mayser rishon and mayser ani, umayser sheni yibatol, and you skip mayser sheni, it's just mayser rishon and mayser ani? O eno ela af mayser rishon nami yibatol. Or maybe shnas mayser, the year of mayser, means a single mayser, i.e. only mayser ani. Maybe on the third and sixth years, there's no mayser sheni, but also no mayser rishon either. Talmud, therefore it says, "V'lalavim tedaber, speak to the Levites, v'amarta aleim, and say to them, Ki sikchu me'ez b'nei Yisrael sa mayser, when you take from the Yidden mayser rishon, asher nasati lochem, that I gave to you, me'itam, from them, b'nachalaschem, in your inheritance, in your land. Hekisha akasov l'nachla, that the pasuk compares mayser rishon to the land that you inherit, manachla in lehefsek, af mayser rishon in lehefsek. Just like your inheritance is yours forever without any breaking up, without any interruption, so also mayser rishon does not have any interruption. It's every single year. I guess not Shemitah, but all of the other years you will have mayser rishon. There is no interruption on years 3 and years 6. So we see that even when there's mayser ani, there's also mayser rishon. We talk also learn in a brisa like this. When you finish separating your mayser on the 3rd year, shana she'ein ba ela mayser echad, a year, right? Shnas mayser, a year that there's only one type of mayser. Ha'ketzad mayser rishon or mayser ani, meaning while in the other 2 years there's mayser rishon and mayser sheni. In this case, it's only one of them. It's only mayser rishon, and then there's mayser ani. There's no mayser sheni. Mayser sheni yibatel. Mayser sheni goes away. Yachol af mayser rishon nami yibatel. Is it possible that even mayser rishon goes away? Tamlomu va'alevi. The pasuk says, and the Levi will come. Kozman sheba teinlo. Tiv Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda, whenever the Levi comes for his mayser rishon, give it to him, even if it's year 3 or year 6. So we see that mayser rishon always applies. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Eino tzarich, you don't need that pasuk. Hari Omer, because you have a pasuk that says, V'alavim t'daber, v'amarta lehem, speak to the Levim, kisikhu meis b'nei Yisrael, sa mayser asher nasati lochem, meis b'nei Yisrael, that when you take the mayser that is becoming to you, the mayser rishon from the Yidden, what just happened? In your inheritance, in your land. The Eibishter compares mayser rishon to your land. Manachla in lehefsek, half mayser rishon in lehefsek. Just like your land has no interruption, also mayser rishon has no interruption. It's every year. Chevre tachlis. What does this mean? It means that there's a 7-year Shemitah cycle. In the Shemitah cycle, in the Shemitah year, because you're not working your land, so there's a much lower yield. It's just whatever grows on its own. You don't separate Shumas and Maisers. Years 1 through 6, you separate Mayser Rishon, 10%, right? Kilu, you have your crop, you take 2% and give that to the Kohen, that's Truma. Then you take 10% and give that to the Levi, that's Mayser. That applies all 6 of those years. That's what's called Mayser Rishon. Then you take an additional 10% from what's left. Now, on years 1 and 2, 4 and 5, you bring that to Yerushalayim and eat it there. That's Mayser Sheni. Years 3 and 6, you don't do Mayser Rishon. Instead, Mayser. Whoa. On years 3 and 6, you don't do Mayser Sheni. You always do Mayser Rishon. On years 3 and 6, you do not do Mayser Sheni. You skip it. Instead, you do Mayser Ani on years 3 and 6. Okay, Givaldig. So that Brisa earlier had said that the first of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for mayser Yerakis, also mayser Behema, mayser Dagon, and also Nedarim for vows. What does that mean, friends? Tanu Rabbanan, a fly. Yeah, you see, Mom, if you're listening to this, maybe skip the next minute or so. I had a situation over here in the house where the garbage needed to be taken out, and it was getting kind of neglected. I don't know, it wasn't a priority for me. Maybe it should have been, but it wasn't. And I neglected it for a little bit too long, and all these flies somehow found out about it, and they all came to the house. And I took out I finally took it out this morning, but now the flies are trying to figure out what to do with themselves, so they're flying all over the place. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? They'll find somebody else who neglected and didn't prioritize taking out the garbage. So, anyways, I'm not sure what that has to do with the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamudu Ano Mechaveru L'Shana. If Reuven says to Shimon, I'm not getting any benefit from you for a year. Okay, fine. Monish Nemasa Chodesh Miyom Liyom. So count 12 months. For a year, for 12 months, don't get any benefit. Okay. But if Reuven says, Shimon, I'm not going to get any benefit from you for this year, even if it's the last day of the year, even if it's the 29th day of Elul, once the first of Tishrei comes, Also, Loshana, the year is over. And afilu man da'amar yom echad b'shana einu chashuv shana. And even according to the opinion who says that one day in a year is not considered a full year, in this case, though, what was his point? When Reuven says, Shimon, I'm not going to get any benefit from you, well, he wanted to put himself in a unfavorable situation where he's not allowed to get any benefit from Shimon. And mayser, for one day, he was unable to get benefit from Shimon. So if he says for this year ends at the 1st of Tishrei, and even if it's only a day until then. Ve'ema Nisan, maybe I'll suggest that the first of the year is Nisan in this regard. Interesting. So we say that, well, when it comes to vows, we go based on the way that people generally talk. And interestingly, Rashi says, V'derech b'nei Adam l'kos Tishrei Rosh Hashanah. Super interesting. Maybe it's like that thing I was saying at the end of the daf yesterday, which is, I don't know, people refer to Tishrei as being the beginning of the year. What do you want me to tell you? Even though we could try to drive it into your head from today till tomorrow that Nisan is the first month, the fact of the matter is, in people's minds, Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei. The year begins in Tishrei. And therefore, if he says that I'm not going to get benefit from you for this year is until Tishrei. That was his intention. Friends, that was Daf Yud Beis of Masechta Rosh Hashanah. We discussed today that Tishrei is the first of the year for mayser of vegetables, for mayser of grains, mayser of vegetables being midor abonon, mayser of grains being midor oraisa. We also discussed a little bit, we saw the source for mayser sheni and mayser ani, that on the 6 years of the Shemitah cycle that we separate Trumas and Maisers, so all 6 years have Mayser Rishon. On years 1, 2, 4, and 5, there's an additional tithe of 10%, that's Mayser Sheni that you eat in Jerusalem, and on years 3 and 6, there's no Mayser Sheni, instead there's Mayser Ani, which is that you take 10% and give that to poor people. And then we said at the end that when it comes to Nidarim, the new year is Tishrei. So if Reuven says, Shimon, I'm not going to get any benefit from you for this year, so this year ends at Tishrei. Friends, that was Daf Yud Beis. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Peace out.